on everything, so we're good.
Let me shut up.
No, it's
hard for you. We get it.
Should I try it? Should I just go?
Yeah, go
Let's
for
go.
it.
Alright. Welcome in. I am Matthew Yoakum here on the beautiful campus of USAO with two of my guests, Niall Crick, Tyler Cauley, two coaches at USAO, and we are here to discuss college sports and kind of the ever-changing landscape of college sports. Today's topic specifically is name, image, and likeness, NIL. This has been a hot topic discussion. For a couple years now in college sports, it's been a big change. I believe 2021 is when the NCAA approved it widespread to allow college athletes to make a little money. But it's brought a lot of changes, brought a lot of interesting circumstances to the table that weren't there before for college athletes. So Coach Crick and Coach Cauley, of course, coach at USAO. Coach Cauley, of course, for an assistant for the men's basketball team. Coach Crick, head coach for the women's soccer team. I invited them not just because they're good guys and I like them, but because they got the player's point of view and they've got a coach's point of view, both playing at USAO and coaching at USAO. They've made that connection there. First, let's talk about what NIL is, in case you at home aren't exactly familiar. I'm sure Coach Crick and Cauley know a little bit about it, but an NIL deal is basically any agreement where an athlete is compensated for money, products, services, etc., for the use of their name, image, or likeness. Okay? So how did this all start? Well, it's a little complicated. NIL deals are kind of common nowadays, but that only started in the last couple of years. If we really want to get into how it started, we got to go back to 2009, way before NIL was approved. Let me know if you guys have heard about this case before. But in 2009, University of California basketball player Ed O'Bannon filed a lawsuit against the NCAA. He said that NCAA Basketball 2009, if you guys know about those games, it was using his name, image, and likeness without his permission. They were making money off of him. Pretty good argument he's got there. From 2009 to 2014, over 20 athletes joined O'Bannon in this lawsuit, and in August 2014, a California court ruled in their favor, paying out $45 million to everybody not to each person, but between all those people, making, a major turning point in NIL. The first case ever that the NCAA gave permissive acknowledgement to an athlete about NIL. So, have you guys heard about that before? Do you guys kind of understand where O'Bannon was coming from and trying to get...
I heard about the case, but honestly, I feel like he was the first person to do it legally. I think there was another athlete after him that was bigger, so it opened the eyes more, and that was Johnny Manziel.
Johnny Manziel, yeah.
He was making Heisman player. He was making all that money for Texas A&M. He was one of the biggest, most exciting football players in college sports at that time. And, he was getting paid under the table, and he was, getting in trouble for it and stuff like that. So I think, if you're going to have a player do it anyway, you might as well just make it legal to do, Mm-hmm. So that's where I came from. I didn't really hear about the court case, honestly, until they actually approved it in 2021, and then I go and do my research, and then, Ed O'Bannon pops up, and he was, the first person to actually formally go file a lawsuit.
Well, and something interesting about that, we mentioned in 2021 the NCAA approved NIL deals for athletes, but something interesting that I didn't know is that NAIA was actually the first to approve NIL for its athletes. And I can get into a case here a little bit if you want, of Chloe Mitchell. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Chloe Mitchell. She was a volleyball player, I believe at, pardon my pronunciation of this, Aquinas College.
Aquinas, yeah.
Aquinas?
In Michigan.
Yeah. Volleyball. She had a TikTok following, 2.6 million followers, and at the time, she wasn't allowed to make money off of it. But she, of course, goes to the NAIA board, tries to appeal, hey, I've got all this influence, a ton of followers, and I'm still a broke college kid. How can we make this work? And the NAIA approved it. So in 2020, she was like the first athlete ever to get that permission and get paid for her name, image, and likeness. But talking about the social media route, I think there could be a lot more college athletes going into the social media route now that NIL deals are allowed, now that it's become more of a common thing. Have you guys noticed that happening more commonly? More players, trying to post, to become these influencers, to have some type of social media presence, maybe for NIL, or do you think it's just, trying to get their name on the map?
Yeah, I think, well, within my team, the answer I guess would probably be no, as far as like players that I know are making money off it and doing it. I think for us here at USAO, and probably for a majority of NAIA schools, that is going to be the easiest and most obvious source. We're not like the bigger schools where you're attracting huge sponsors or huge donors, and a lot of the work for NIL probably is going to be on a more individual basis through social media and stuff. And I think it's something that us as a university probably need to be exploring better, and possibly training our athletes, helping them with a few guidelines, and that kind of thing. But I mean, I've definitely seen it at the higher levels in some individuals. I teach a sports management class, and we talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago, and there's a gymnast somewhere in Division 1 that's making more money than any of the other sports, which she's obviously not making more money than the football players for the school, but her as an individual is making...
I think you're talking about Gunn.
LSU
gymnast.
It was an LSU
and
gymnast.
her boyfriend is the pitcher in MLB.
Right.
Skeens.
And she's making an incredible amount of money, and it's pretty much all through social media.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely an avenue that I think us here at USAO need to explore a bit more.
And speaking of revenues, like you mentioned, for big D1 schools, for NCAA schools, it can be a whole lot easier to find sponsorships, to find donors, alumni, who want to donate. At a place like USAO, what type of NIL deals do you think could actually be possible? Because in my mind, social media, if you can build a brand for yourself through that, I'm all for it, go for it. But, can we get in touch with local businesses, even like hand out free t-shirts or something like that? What opportunities, I guess just around Chickasha or locally, do you think, are there for USAO athletes?
Yeah. I would kind of follow on with what you previously said. I think, and I haven't looked at everybody, but I would imagine I have several girls on my team that have a larger Instagram following than the USAO Women's Soccer Program itself. Probably larger than the whole Dover Athletics Instagram itself. So if I'm a local business and I'm looking to get involved with the community, or potentially want to give back a little bit, but also just want to get my name out there, it probably makes more sense to leverage that through an individual athlete that has 8,000 followers than through my soccer program that maybe only has a couple thousand, So I do know that our athletics department works with a lot of the local businesses, and whether it's to put a sponsorship banner on the fence, or sponsor halftime at the basketball game or whatever, they may be able to get more exposure if they're sponsoring an individual athlete and having that athlete in turn post them on Instagram. Hey, I went to eat at Chick-fil-A today, or whatever that is. I think that's definitely areas that, going back to what we talked about earlier, that we haven't really dived into quite enough yet for our individual athletes, as far as this whole NIL stuff is going. So, yeah.
What do you see anything different, Tyler, than?
I think I think I kind of agree. Only problem that I would have is a lot of our for them to make money, you would have to go to like the bigger chains. So like it would have to be like you said, like a Chick-fil-A, and like they would have to like make posts and stuff like that. And like from my experience and through like what I know of like knowing athletes at these big NCAA schools, it's also like a second job. Like you have to play your sport, you have to focus on school and whatnot, and that's priority number one. But like when NIL started, like that's like their part-time job. Like like it's in your contract sometimes. Like so like when we're talking about like posting and stuff like that, I think like us on this level, we don't know like how serious it can get. But like I think the best way for us to do it is like Coach said, is to go around these local businesses. So like for example, one of our sponsors is like Chicken Express. But Chicken Express is a bigger chain. So like but you would just have to condense it to Chickasha, Chicken Express and whatnot, and they use their face and stuff, and like you said, post them on Instagram, and you compensate them for that. It's just I don't know how the guidelines would work with them also still being a big chain, because there's Chicken Express all across Oklahoma, there's Chick-fil-A all across the world and whatnot, and it's definitely easier to go get you a big name person and do it, but if you want to do it specifically for your town, I think athletes like our school is the best, because like who's in your Chick-fil-A more than we are? Like we're in here the most, so like you might as well use us. Like we're always here. I feel like it makes it more personal as well when you come into like a small town like Chickasha, because from my experience playing and coaching, all these NAIs, not a lot of them are in like big cities. Like some of them are like, but not all of them. A lot of them are in like a smaller towns where like if you did make it more personal and to cater to that town, you actually focus on a certain audience, I think it could actually work in the players' favor and in the business's favor.
Yeah, I think from a larger perspective, I've been here now for, gosh, it'll be 18 years in August. I've almost lived here longer than I've lived where I was born, back in Scotland. And the connection between the community of Chickasha and the university, I think is improving. It's probably still not where we would all really like for it to be. You know, you look at some of these big Division 1s, and not that we'll ever be competing for a football national championship the same way OU is or whatever, but it's OU in Norman, it's OSU in Stillwater, it's, you know, Ole Miss in Oxford. Like, it's the connection there. And I think there really is a way here for us, with the right staff, the right training, for us to help build that connection. So for me, for example, we had an alumni day last August, and we got all of the food for that day donated by the Flower Shop pizza place, right? Well, we didn't give them a whole lot in return. That was out of their own good faith, but we made sure that we posted a picture of the lunch and thanked them for it afterwards. And I think it's things like that, as small as that aren't super difficult, that creates the connection between the business, the university, the students here on campus. There's probably some students who before that lunch didn't even know what the Flower Shop was or where the Flower Shop was, and now they might go check it out. And you know, we have players on our team that work in certain places that they'll post a picture of themselves drinking one of these teas, you know, or whatever the young people are drinking these days, and hey, go get yourself one of these. And they're doing it because they work there, and they probably are being told to by their boss. But it kind of works the same way, right? If I'm an athlete and I'm getting paid a little bit of money on the side, it's not difficult for me to go down there and post a picture of myself with an item from that store, promoting the store at the same time. And again, I think then in turn, maybe people from that store now want to come watch a basketball game because this basketball player is promoting their stuff. And I think that for us is that connection with the community, which hopefully will also then increase opportunities for our athletes.
Well, I think you both make good points. Like, I think there's a lot more like you mentioned, I mean, at the D1 level, it's a little easier for the community to mix in with the school just because of the resources at those schools. But in a place like Chickasha, I do think it's possible to grow that connection, and like fairly easily, I think too. As I'm doing this research for this podcast, I looked, the average NIL deal for an NCAA athlete was like, you can get paid a whole lot more than this, but on average, like a semester, it's only like $100 a semester you might get paid. And that's not every athlete, of course. You got a ton of different sports out there, some that just don't get as much recognition as others. So be it. Arch Manning makes like $6 million through NIL, the football player. But back to my point, the girl Chloe Mitchell from the NAIA we talked about a little bit ago, she has created this platform for athletes, NAIA, NCAA, where basically she tries to help them get NIL deals and does it kind of through group deals. So, if maybe like 6 players from the basketball team or something, we need 6 players to be like in our commercial, you'll all make $50 for being in the commercial. Something like that. She does a lot of that. She's gotten over like 500 athletes signed up and making money off of it. Do you think those group deals, to me, seem like they could be the way to connect the community and the team? Because, at our level, you may not be able to pick out, on the street, that's a Drover soccer player, you know what I mean? But if you grab a few people from the team, put them in a commercial, or have them at an event you're having at your business, I think that's a great way to help the athletes get a little NIL money and to bring business and the university a little closer. Do you guys see the same vision I'm seeing? Do you guys share that sentiment?
Yeah, I think softball is doing something similar to that. The girls in my sports management class explained to me they do have some sort of setup, which sounds kind of a bit like a group situation going on. Again, I kind of just think everything's about connection. The reason that the big car dealerships in Oklahoma City use the Thunder players is because that's the community now. They connect with Thunder players. We're the NBA champions. If this person's buying a car from there, I want to go check it out as well. And it's what we necessarily don't have to a great degree here. I think is that connection. I think softball is probably one of the sports that has it the most because all of their players are from here. So they have a connection with the families and the people that want to come and watch the games. But again, there are ways for us to build that. So I don't know if you guys saw earlier this week, but a group of our students just won the Chickasha event of the year. Was it Chickasha or Grady County?
I think it was Chickasha.
Right, which was the international students. They put on a dinner last fall where they all cooked food from all over the world and then served it to people, and they just won the event of the year at the Chamber of Commerce event this week. That they've built a connection now with a whole bunch of people who were never interested, and we probably will now get a few more fans at the soccer games because a lot of those student internationals are obviously soccer players. And so now we've built a connection there that hopefully can pay dividends down the line in terms of some of this stuff. Maybe one of those people that came to that event owns a large business, and they can now pay a group of our soccer players to advertise their business and make a little bit of money. And yeah, I think like you kind of said, the average of $100. I mean, I don't think here at USAO we're going to be in a position anytime soon to be getting people that are making 6 figures or even 5 figures. But I also don't think we've got any students here that's going to turn down $100. So however small that may be, I think the connections are the big piece of it.
I just think like the connections, and another thing is like understanding like the statistics and the numbers. So like Coach Crick has been here for like way longer than me, but just being here in Chickasha for my 3 years or 4 years now, going on 5. Honestly, like if you take out USAO out of Chickasha, like what Like, no offense to Chickasha, but like, what is really in Chickasha? Like, so like honestly, I think it would be smart to do something like that. Like, kind of like he referenced OU and Norman. Norman's a big city in Oklahoma, but like really think about it. Like, if you take OU out of Norman, like what do you go to Norman for?
You are, and if you just took OU out of Norman, you're losing like 50,000 people.
So that's what I'm saying.
Town.
So like essentially, what I'm saying is like Chickasha is like a lower scale Norman, to where like honestly, like I feel like it could be really easy to where when you think of Chickasha, the first thing you think of is USAO, like. And then to make it even more, like if you go to the next step, like you come to USAO, like what about our numbers? Like what percentage of our students are athletes? Like I think if you take, like let's say USAO took away athletics, like how many students did they lose? Like I know just softball and baseball, they probably have over 100 students just between those two programs. Coach Crick, they have a bigger program. Like, and I say bigger because like we only play 5 players on a court at a time, so our team is never really bigger than 15 players. But 2 programs that's 100 students right there. If you add men's and women's soccer, that's another probably over 100 again right there or close to it. So it's just like, honestly, I'm surprised that Chickasha hasn't used the university more, especially because I feel like from when I got here, my first year here to now, Chickasha in itself is growing. Like adding bigger chains like the Wingstops, the McAllisters. Like I heard that there's like a Ulta, which is like a beauty store. Like we have female athletes. Like those are places to where like, yeah, they're big name companies, but you're still in a small town. So if you want these small town people to come walk into your store, like what's the next biggest business in the town? And in my opinion, it's the university. Like university is literally in the middle of Chickasha. You have to drive through the campus sometimes to like get to the neighborhoods. Like it's a huge part of what goes on in Chickasha. So I feel like sometimes if like these business owners or business people like kind of understood that, like I think, like he said, like our players aren't going to turn down the money. Like I have to appear in a commercial, I have to wear a shirt and take a picture. Like it's really not that hard. It's like these students would be more than willing, and honestly, a lot of them just want to be able to say that like they're in the NIL world. So like if you made them feel like that, like I truly believe that like it probably won't take off like a big NCAA school, but on the NAIA level, I think we have a setting to where like it could really benefit our university and our athletic programs, also along with the local businesses. I just don't think that. I think the businesses are kind of scared to take the risk, because like I always heard like in the business world, it takes money to make money. So like I kind of feel like they're thinking of it as a gamble. Like if we donate stuff or if we do stuff that we're not making any profit and it doesn't work out, we're in the hole. But it's like you have to take risk. And I feel like it is kind of a risk to put your business in our players' hands, but I mean, he has a team full of internationals.
Yeah.
Like
People
if they advertise, your business is going to touch places that it would have never touched had they not advertised for you. Like just himself, like he's from Scotland, correct? Mm-hmm. Like if he was to advertise something, somebody from Scotland is going to know about Chickasha. Versus there might be somebody in Norman that doesn't even know what that person from Scotland knows about Chickasha, and it's just like, I just don't feel like people in the business world really recognize that, because they don't see us as an OU. Yeah. So they feel like we can't do it, like we don't have the resources to do it. But as long as you have the right people with the right personalities that can go and get you like more customers and whatnot, it could work out.
I think a big thing for us is, and kind of falls on us as coaches as well, we have to kind of be realistic about that part of it, is that a lot of this is going to come with success on the field as well. Take a program like OU, their NIL program is massive. It's going to dwindle if they're not winning games. You're going to have less of those alums that want to get involved, and so to me again, it's no coincidence that softball might be the only one that has kind of a setup going on. They've been the most successful by far. They've set the standard over the last 10 years here at USAO, and so for us, success is going to drive interest. It's also going to drive, well, softball gets to host a national tournament every single year, so they get to bring in 3 or 4 different schools, which then they're in the hotels and then they're eating at the local spots in Chickasha, and they're making money for the community of Chickasha through being successful and through getting to host. So I think the challenge for us as coaches is to build programs that the community are proud of, and in turn can bring some money into them, because anybody that gets involved in any type of advertising, NIL, they want something back from it, and so I think that's the challenge for us, is we got to win some games.
You're both former athletes, now coaches, of course. Go back to that mindset of when you were playing. Tyler, a little more recently than Coach Crick. A little more. But go back and like have that athlete's mindset. Do you think, right now it's not affecting NAI very much, but do you think if NIL was around when you were playing, do you think that would have made, some interesting decisions in terms of like whether or not people decided to go NAIA, whether or not people decided to go NCAA, just because maybe there's an opportunity for a little extra money? I guess my question is, do you think athletes are limited when they come to the NAIA when it comes to NIL, or do you think those opportunities exist?
So I know you said to go back to when I'm an athlete, but when I was an athlete, I never really had the opportunity to go like bigger than NAI. I think the highest like offer I ever had, like during my whole recruiting process, being a transfer and coming out of high school, I had like a Division II. But honestly, I've learned, like, to answer your question, me being a coach in recruiting, that's when I've learned, like, so for example, let's say, and I'm not sure how it works in soccer, but let's say like we're recruiting this kid that played at a Division I his freshman year, and he's been D2 the last 2 years. Well, his Division I, if he played Division I from 2021 on, he was getting paid. So then it's like you have the trouble of getting them to come to NAI because of what they're used to. So like they're going from getting NIL, even dropping down to D2. D2 gives you, if you go to the right D2, they have NIL packages for you as well. Like that's part of the recruitment talk when you're trying to commit. So it's like you're getting them to try to commit to an NAI where they won't get NIL. And then like you gotta think of all the other things, like we don't charter everywhere. We don't fly to certain games. So like, yeah, they might be dropping down to our level where they haven't played in 2 years, so that makes them accessible to play at our level, but they're hesitant. Like those kids don't want to leave what they're used to, just because like NIL has grown so much to where some of these kids that don't go pro are making more money playing in college than they ever will when they graduate. Like you see now, like in the basketball world at the high Division I level, like kids were coming in college and leaving after 1 year. Like they didn't care about a degree. If I'm good enough, I'm trying to go pro. Now you have kids that were good enough after their first year, they end up staying all 4 years. So like NIL, like in a way, is like kind of helping these schools as well. Like the schools are paying these kids money, but these schools are graduating more kids now. Now you have these kids staying 4 years, because why would I not stay 4 years and you're paying me 7 figures every single season for me to play, to where I could go in the NBA, make 7 figures for 1 year and never play another game. You wash out of the league. I made millions for 4 years. Like technically they could be set by the time they get their degree, walk across the stage, if they're smart with their money, but it's NIL, so they already put themselves in that business realm, so even when they graduate, they already created a brand for themselves, so now they can keep it going if they like actually want to. It's like you just don't have that school's backing. But I think now, like the NAIs, when it comes to NIL and stuff, like we are kind of hindered. Like we don't get to give these kids that money, but if we did, I do think people sleep on our talent level. Like I'm pretty sure that Coach Crick has coached a girl, maybe several, that if they had the right publicity, they can go compete on these Division II teams, or go compete for a roster spot on a Division I. I know for sure, I've played with some and coached some, that if they have the right resources or the right person getting in front of the right people, they could be somewhere making NIL too. Like, our talent level is up there. Like, we have competitive athletics on this level. It's just we don't always have the resources to give these kids like all that money. But if we did, I feel like we're competing with at least some of the best Division twos if we had the money to give them NIL.
Yeah, but don't tell my players that. Yeah, look, to answer your question directly, yeah, they're going to have less opportunities for NIL in the NEI. That's just a fact. I've never coached at the Division 1 level. I've never played there. You know, going back to my experience, look, I just loved soccer so much. Like, it was just my entire life from growing up that you gave me a place to play and play at a good level, and you know, I had an incredible coach while I was here, and I had an incredible 4-year experience. It was just the idea of NIL back then, I mean, you're talking about 2008 to 12, wasn't even a thing, but I just wanted to play so badly, and I think, but I'm also not ignorant enough to think that if I'd have grown up maybe in this society that it wouldn't be in the back of your mind. It just wasn't a thing back then. So I think one of the things that the NAI is doing right now, which I, being a bit more of a purist, maybe obviously a little bit older than Tyler, and I like this part of it, is we're still providing that kind of real college experience. I think all you have to do is turn on ESPN now. You'll hear one of these Division 1 coaches talking about how difficult that is now to have relationships with players. The idea of college athletics in the beginning was to help grow young people from high school into the working life, whether that's to be a professional or to, for the larger percentage, go into the working world. And a huge part of that is the relationships with your coaches, with your teammates, with the professors and staff. And what NIL has done now, which again, huge power to the young people, is it's given them limitless opportunities that they're embracing, but they're also now probably losing a lot of the life experiences that previously came, because a lot of these guys and girls are transferring 4 times in 4 years. So how can you ever build a meaningful relationship with a coach over a period of time? You've never really gone through the adversity with those coaches, and seen how you can respond to that, how they help you respond to that. The thing that I loved so much about USAO was the relationship that I built with my head coach, that I still have, with the assistant coaches, with the professors, and some of the people that are still really, really important in my life. And I think from a lot of the conversations I've had and a lot of the advertising that the NAIA is doing, is that we're positioning ourselves as still providing that opportunity. Not everybody's good enough to be making $1 million NIL. And if your goal is just to continue to play the sport you love, get an education, and have a positive experience, there's many places that still can do that for you. Not that you can't get that at the top level, that's not what I'm trying to say, but I think there's huge value in the relationships that you build with staff and coaches and teammates, and kind of going through that whole 4 years, maybe not doing so well at the start, then getting better and building on that. And I think the NEI is a fantastic place to be able to still do that.
To piggyback, even like you said, the purity, to kind of piggyback also, like, your margin for error. Like, when you go up to, like, on our level, like, kids can be kids still. Like, he's a coach, you probably recruit a freshman that's 18 years old, but like, when you go to that Division 1 level and that 18-year-old is making $1 million, their room for error is very small. You're under a microscope at all times, because we're giving you so much money. Like, we can't have you out here making these mistakes, because like you're essentially a professional, to where like you come to NAI and you could be a kid. Like, you can have the growing pains, like he said, to where you might not be good enough, or you might have mistakes hindering you when you first get here, and you learn from them and you grow to where on those higher levels they'll just get rid of you. Like, we can pay somebody else this $1 million or the 6 figures, whatever the amount is, but I think that has a lot to do with like the purity at the NIA. The NAI is still giving us is like these kids can grow and actually learn, and they could grow and learn from like making mistakes, to where like when you go to those bigger levels, like your margin for error is very small. Like just because now they get paid, to where here us not having that, these kids can come here and make mistakes, and like we actually teach them how to like not do that, and we actually like grow them versus here, you know what, like we don't have the time for that, we can find somebody else and we just let them go. Like we actually invest in the kids, like and I think being a coach and when you recruit and stuff like that, I think like you said, like the NAI advertises, but like even us as a program here, like that's part of like our recruiting pitch is like we will put a lot of time into your kid if they do come to our school. It's more on a personal level, just like he said, like we have the time to sit here and actually create the relationship to where like we learn your kid on a personal level, versus when you go and making that much money, they know you on a professional business level only.
You kind of touched on this a bit ago, Tyler, but I wanna ask it again, and kind of in a different way. But you know, you mentioned that a lot of times nowadays, like athletes in college can make more than they would make in the pros. I have an example written down here of this girl from Texas A&M. She was a softball player making like 1.5 million or something along those lines. But in the professional softball league, you're lucky to make over 50K like a year. So in terms, when thinking about players like that, do you think NIL deals are becoming an incentive to graduate more athletes? Like, do you think we might have seen more athletes drop out saying this ain't worth my time, like college isn't worth my time, if it weren't for like a financial incentive to go along with that?
I mean, I think so. I mean, you're a college kid. Coach Crick was a college kid. I don't think any college student would voluntarily just drop out of college knowing that they left X amount of money on the table had they just finished. Like, unless you have like some dire circumstance, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you need to, like for your family or whatnot, but like, I don't think anybody would sit across from you and tell you like, yeah, in your 4 years you can make this amount of money, you just have to finish, you have to graduate. I just think now, like, I think it's indirectly happening to where the kids are starting to realize, like you said, like, if I'm going to this real world, my first job, I might make 50K if I leave right now, but if I stay 2-3 more years, I'll triple that if I just get my degree and graduate. So I think now, like, they're graduating by default in a sense, just so they can get the money. Like, a lot of these kids, like, I don't want to say all of them, I just think I think a lot of kids still do care about like the education, getting your degree, just because like that is important. I know Coach Crick said it earlier, like majority of us as athletes, when we graduate, like you're going into the workforce. Like a small percentage, as you know, is going professional. So you kind of need that degree when you want to go get a job. Like it makes your chances of getting hired better. But I think now, like when you go to those bigger schools and they're getting all the money, like at the time they're in college, they're probably not thinking about the degree. But then when they get out and they catch themselves having to look for a job, they're probably like, dang, like I really just was looking for the money, but honestly it benefited me because now I got the money with the degree as well. Like, so I mean, I don't think it's like a hard, like, let's keep NIL because we're graduating more kids. I just think it's more on the kids saying like, you know what, let me get as much money as I can. And indirectly, I'm going to get my degree out of it as well. So it's kind of like a win-win. It's like a win-win. Because then, like, universities, like, it looks better when you get to go now, and like your graduation rate is now going higher because you have kids staying longer to actually complete their degree versus leaving, and then they say like, oh, I'm going to try to go pro. I'll come back and finish my degree, and they never do. Yeah. Versus now you have these kids in 4 years. They just go through and go ahead and graduate. So like I think in return, NIL is kind of benefiting everybody. Of course the players a little more, but I think still it's benefiting the universities that are providing the NIL for the players.
Yeah, I think that probably hits football and basketball probably more so than anything else. I mean, and maybe baseball a little bit as well. I'm not exactly sure what the baseball rules are as far as when you're allowed to declare, but all those other sports don't make any money anyway.
Yeah.
You know, so if I can, I would think that they were probably in large part staying and graduating, a lot of them anyway. Whereas it probably really has affected basketball in particular, you know, because a lot of them were one and done in the past, and now they can stay 4 years, be more prepared physically and mentally for when they do try to become a pro, but also make pretty good money in that 4 year span. So yeah, I think that's probably relative to each sport.
Just a quick question: what is the rule for soccer to declare?
There are no rules. We've actually had a few individuals on the women's side that have just foregone college altogether.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I think in soccer the US is you know, constantly trying to play catch up to the rest of the world and to Europe, and the model over there in Europe is academy systems. You know, join a club at, heck, there's kids joining clubs as young as 7 and 8 years old,
And they just play in the club,
working their way all the way through up, and
Yeah.
you know, university, college is not even in their mind. It's, I'm going to be a professional,
right?
and so over here, Division One in large parts has almost acted like the academy system.
Mm-hmm.
It's really shifting a bit more towards a international model, and we have seen, I think one of the Thompson sisters that skipped college and went straight to the NWSL, so we're seeing more of that happening in soccer, because those kids aren't making a huge amount of money. I do know one player that's making pretty decent money at Duke as under NIL girls soccer, but yeah, they can make more as a professional.
So we've kind of been here for a while. I'm sorry I'm holding y'all up, but let's start wrapping it up. But let me ask this one question. In the near future, let's say like 5 to 10 years, where do you think NIL will look like? What do you think NIL will look like in the NAIA? Because right now we really don't see much, and maybe you know, NIL is so new. Maybe 10 years isn't even enough time to let it grow in the NAIA. But if you could predict what that landscape will look like for NAIA and NAIA athletes in the next 5 to 10 years, what do you think that looks like?
Gosh, I struggled to make predictions. You know, when I played in the NAIA, we didn't even have a clearinghouse. You know, so, and we had 28-year-olds on our team, and it was a totally different landscape to what it is now. So it's really hard to make predictions. I think for me, my hope and kind of a vision that I do see is all the things that we've sort of talked about in engaging communities. You know, a lot of these NAI schools are set up in similar locations that we are throughout the country, and you know, fostering a sense of pride amongst the athletes who are here in the town, and also the community of the town in the university, and in turn hopefully that starts to create some small scale opportunities for our athletes with the businesses locally, and then, like you said at the very start, athletes sort of leveraging their own individual platforms through social media, and trying to gain a little bit of revenue that way. Those would be the sort of the two big things that I see as possible in the next few years for the NEI.
I'm kind of with them. Like, I think it's hard to predict, but I guess the one thing that I could see it helping it grow is kind of what we touched on about like how these kids are staying like 4 years. So I think I don't really know like the correct wording to say it, but I think the talent is moving down the totem pole to where like you have Division I talent that are coming out of high school at 18 years old, but these college coaches are, well, why would I take an 18-year-old when I could take a 24-year-old instead that already has the experience? So that 18-year-old that was this big recruit, in a year or two, he didn't play at Division I, he's down Division II. Well, now that just keeps happening. So now you have like these big recruits end up like here at an NAIA level. Like I've played against kids that were like top recruits. Like by the time they were leaving high school, like if they wanted to, they could have made NIL straight coming out of high school just off their name. And I just feel like for the NAIA level, I could see players benefiting other players to where we have this kid that experienced NIL. he makes his way to NAI and he brings his publicity to his teammates, and then his teammates feed off of it. And I think that's where we'll see NAI benefit from NIL first. And then once they see that these players can actually help their businesses, I think more businesses won't be scared to take the risk to pull the trigger on asking NAI players to ask them for a deal or whatnot. That's where I see it going, at least.
Yeah, our kids are amazing, you know, and we have to lean on that, because again, we're not getting the state of Oklahoma to support USAO's baseball team. It's just not happening. We're not getting 20,000 fans at a game. That's never going to happen. So we have to find ways to build on the individual stories of our kids. You know, from a soccer perspective, we've got all these internationals, and that it's so unique. You know, players from Iceland and Australia are now here in Chickasha, Oklahoma, and that's crazy, right? So that, and then I'm you know, it's the story of the individuals and how they manage their way through university and what are their other interests outside of the sport that they're playing, that we really have to try and leverage in different ways, which I think the opportunities all kind of lie in the story of the individual athlete themselves.
Well, I think we're going to end things here. I do want to say, I know he's getting a little older. He might be graduating this semester. I can't remember. But Chris Gakpo, breaking the backboard, he needs to get in touch with like a window company and try and get one of these deals signed. I was just thinking of that while we're sitting here talking. I'm like, man, he could really, you know, help advertise for somebody. But thank you to Coach Crick, to Coach Cauley for joining me. I really appreciate it. I think we had a really good conversation. I hope our guests at home watching this, listening to this, you know, have expanded their mind on what NIL possibilities are out there, and you know how the landscape is changing and how it is right now. I'm Matthew Yoakum, signing off. See you next time.